Good evening, everyone. Let's get underway. Welcome to the Council meeting of the 21st of August 2023. We'll commence by reading the Acknowledgement of Country, and I call upon Councillor Stavrou to do so, please.
I acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people as the traditional owners and original custodians of this land, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and the elders from other communities who may be here today.
Thank you, Councillor Stavrou. Welcome to tonight's Council meeting. Before we commence the meeting, I request that all mobile telephones are switched off or turned to silent, please. Thank you. The Council meeting is being live streamed on the Council's website, so you can watch proceedings of the meeting, councillor deliberations and voting. The meeting will also be recorded and made available on the Council website as soon as practicable after the meeting. My name is Councillor Felicity Sinfield and I'm the Mayor of the City of Boroondara. I'll start by introducing my fellow councillors. Seated to my left at the horseshoe table in the Council chamber are Councillor Jim Park, Councillor Cynthia Watson, Councillor Nick Stavrou, Councillor Wes Galt, Councillor Di Gillies, and on the other side of the chamber we have Councillor Lisa Hollingsworth, our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Jane Addis, Councillor Susan Bigger and Councillor Victor Franco. I also acknowledge in attendance this evening our Chief Executive Officer, Mr Philip Storer, seated to my right, and our Coordinator of Governance, Ms Kirsten Ritchie, to my left. There are many other officers in attendance tonight and they will be introduced as required. I'll now move to apologies. Ms Ritchie, are there any apologies for this evening's meeting?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, there is one apology, Councillor Thompson, who is on a leave of absence.
Thank you. Item 1 on our agenda is the adoption and confirmation of the minutes of the Council meeting held on the 24th of July 2023. Councillors, can I please have a motion to adopt and confirm the minutes? Councillor Galt.
Moved as issued.
Thank you. Councillor Gillies.
Seconded, thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, is anyone opposed to those minutes and that motion? Doesn't appear so. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Thank you. Item 2 on our agenda is the declaration of conflict of interest of any councillor or council officer. Councillors and council officers, are there any conflicts of interest that you wish to foreshadow for a matter on tonight's agenda? Councillor Addis.
I'll be applying for leave in general business.
Thank you. We'll note that when the time comes. And Councillor Gillies.
Exactly the same, thank you.
Thank you. Item 3, deputations and presentations, petitions, public submissions. Ms Ritchie, are there any petitions or joint letters this evening?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, there is one petition included in the agenda for tonight's meeting. I've also been informed that Councillor Franco would like to present an additional petition on the Uluru Statement from the Heart.
Thank you. Councillor Franco, can you please state the purpose of the petition and the number of signatories? And I'll remind you that we can't make comments at this time.
Thank you. I'm delighted as the Chair of the Boroondara Reconciliation Advisory Committee to table the petition regarding the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which I have here. The petition reads, Boroondara councillors, please pass a motion of support for the Uluru Statement from the Heart as an expression of commitment to reconciliation with Australia's and Boroondara's First Nations people and the implementation of the Boroondara Reconciliation Action Strategy 2022 to 2026. I strongly support the petition and I urge each and every one of my fellow councillors and colleagues to also support the petition. Our reconciliation strategy was adopted by Council in June 2022 and I consider it to be consistent with the Uluru Statement from the Heart. If you're confused, I am complying with provisions 57.3.2 of our governance rules, which state that I can state not only the persons from whom the petition comes from, but the number of signatories and the material matters expressed in the petition, which is precisely what I am doing. I think it's incumbent for the benefit of those in the gallery and watching online that under our governance rules, it should be noted that unless a matter is deemed urgent, no motion may be made on any petition other than to receive it until the next council meeting. I understand a request from the organisers of the petition for a deputation has been made, and I understand that that will be agreed to at the next council meeting, although I think it would have been better
Councillor
with
Franco.
the members in the gallery present for that to have allowed to have been made tonight.
Now is not the time for comments, Councillor Franco.
Okay, well, I'll end by just noting very simply that we're at a significant milestone in the history of our nation, and I'd like to publicly declare and express my support for recognising Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in our Constitution through a voice to Parliament. Thank you.
Councillors, is anyone prepared to move a motion to receive and note the petitions as displayed on the screen? Councillor Park.
So moved, Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Biggar.
Yes, very happy to do so.
Thank you, councillors. Is anyone opposed? It appears not. I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. That brings us to item 4 on the agenda, informal meetings of councillors. Councillors, is anyone prepared to move a motion to receive and note the record of informal meetings of councillors as printed in our business papers? Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I am happy to receive it, but I just wanted to make a point of clarification, if I may.
Sure.
In the meeting on the 24th of July, it stated matters discussed include organised sport allocation and fee policy. I just wanted to make note that that's actually been deferred to a future meeting in September. So if that could be removed, thank you.
I'm sure officers can take care of that administrative matter. Thank you. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Addis.
I'm happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone opposed? It appears not. I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. I declare that carried. That brings us to item 5, public question time. Council encourages the submission of public questions prior to 12 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Questions submitted prior to 12 noon will be provided with a detailed verbal response as well as a response in writing. Those submitted after 12 p.m. will receive a verbal response if possible, but will otherwise be taken on notice for a more comprehensive written response to be provided in due course. Ms Ritchie, do we have some public questions this evening?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. We have received 3 questions from 2 people before 12 p.m. and 1 question after 12 p.m.
Thank you. The first question I have before me is from Sophie Patterson of Hawthorn, and the question relates to an oak tree outside 31 Fairview Street in Hawthorn. The question reads, what other alternatives has Council explored to save the large oak tree outside 31 Fairview Street in Hawthorn? I call upon the Director of Urban Living, Mr Scott Walker, to provide a response if possible.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm providing this response on behalf of the Director of Places and Spaces, Daniel Freer, and I'll step my way through the response. It's quite lengthy, but there's a fair bit of information that needs to be understood in relation to this tree. The tree is located at 31 Fairview Street and has limbs in contact with uninsulated low-voltage wire with a span of under 40 metres. Under the Electricity Safety Electric Line Clearance Regulations 2020, it's stated that a minimum clearance space for uninsulated power lines that span less than 40 metres is 1,000 millimetres or 1 metre. This information can be found beginning on page 37 of the regulations. All Victorian councils must comply with the Electrical Safety Act 1998 and the Electrical Safety Electric Line Clearance Regulations 2020 under the direction of the State Government Regulator for Electricity Safety, Energy Safety Victoria, to ensure that trees remain outside of the minimum clearance spaces for electric lines. These regulations have a significant impact across Victoria regarding how we manage trees around electrical assets, both with declared and non-declared bushfire regions. ESB are actively undertaking compliance audits, enforcement and issuing of infringements in accordance with this legislation. Boroondara is one of several metropolitan councils that have initiated advocacy with the state government asking to review the current approach to the regulations. Boroondara is a low bushfire risk area, and we believe the current regulations are detrimental to amenity and canopy tree cover. In consideration of these impacts on the Boroondara community, Council in 2021 developed and submitted an alternative compliance mechanism application seeking to retain trees such as this particular specimen. At this time, that application has not been approved. In regard to the options for this particular tree being retained, the following was considered. Firstly, retaining the tree in its current form. This would result in a notice of failure to comply with the Electrical Safety Act issued by ESV and involve a substantial fine with 28 days to address the breach. If we don't address the cause of the breach, we can then be prosecuted in the Magistrates Court of Victoria. ESV are also able to compel City Power to ensure the tree becomes compliant with the regulations. The end result of this process would be a significant cost to Council and a compliant but non-viable tree, as described further below. As a result, this option has not been selected. Next option considered was pruning the tree to the specified clearance distance. This again would reduce the canopy cover by over 40%. Completing this work involves pruning the central leader, commonly known as the trunk, and would make the tree unviable and result in its decline and eventual loss. As a result, this option has also not been selected. The third option is converting power lines to aerial bundle cable. This has been used on the power line span to the south of this tree. This approach would reduce the required clearance from the power lines to the trunk from 1 metre down to 30 centimetres and centralising the wires within insulation. Council does not have accurate cost model for this, but it would involve an estimated cost of $30,000 with the potential of additional costs such as replacing the pole being required. There is a potential that this could achieve compliance in the short term, but as the trunk continues to grow larger, it would most likely become non-compliant once again, necessitating the removal of the tree. And accordingly, this option hasn't been selected. Fourth is undergrounding of the power lines. This would incur costs of over $200,000 to Council, with an additional cost of rewiring each property to be borne by the property owner. The tree value has been calculated at $25,709 using the City of Melbourne amenity value formula calculating a tree's amenity value. The cost of undergrounding the power lines is not commensurate with the benefit value of the tree. So again, this option is not being pursued. The final option is tree removal and planting of a new tree, which can be managed within compliance requirements, which is the option that has been selected. The cost of removal and replanting, which includes 3 years of maintenance, is approximately $3,300. For your information, the history of this tree is as follows. It was pruned in 2016 for power line clearance. This tree was then again inspected in 2021 and placed on a list of trees to be investigated for an alternative compliance program with ESV, seeking to avoid the loss of the tree. The tree was approved by ESV to be put into an exceptions program, giving 12 months to investigate options for its retention. Council undertook a crown lift over the road and footpath in December 2022, and this did not involve power line clearance and was conducted under the standards for pruning. Council then continued to investigate options for retention as described above, including a re-inspection in January of this year before the decision was made to remove the tree.
Thank you very much, Mr Walker, for that comprehensive response. Ms Patterson, you will receive a written response to your question in due course. I'm not sure if you've joined us in the gallery tonight or online, but that will be forthcoming. Question 2 is from Mr Ian Hundley of Balwyn North and relates to protection of canopy tree cover in Boroondara. Thank you for your question, Mr Hundley. Are you with us tonight? Yes. And the question is allowed in accordance with Chapter 2 of the Governance Rules and reads as follows. Why has Council not taken the opportunity to increase the maximum penalty for the unauthorised removal or damage to trees on private property, which, as shown on the Council website, remains at $2,000, notwithstanding the fact that the penalty could be increased to $3,800 approximately as indexed, which could be applied under the local law made by Council under the Local Government Act 2020. I call upon the Director of Urban Living, Scott Walker, once again to respond to this question. Thank you, Mr Walker.
Thanks, Mayor. A much shorter response this time. Council has been advocating to the state government for significant increases of $20,000 or more in the penalties for unlawful tree removal under the local law. But at this stage, the changes have been limited to $3,800 where Council goes through the process of amending or preparing a new local law under the updated Local Government Act. Amending a local law is a significant process involving a number of key steps, including public consultation and formal approvals. Whilst the tree protection local law is not formally due for review until 2026, Council will consider the opportunity for changes sooner as a response to the tree canopy strategy being finalised this year and any changes that the state government make to local law fines or other tree protection initiatives such as metropolitan-wide tree controls under the planning scheme.
Thank you. Mr Hundley, you'll receive a written response in due course. Question 3, also from Mr Hundley of Balwyn North, relates to publicising canopy tree offences. Thank you for your question. Once again, this is allowed in accordance with Chapter 2 of our Governance Rules, and the question reads as follows. Please advise how Council could effectively publicise offences related to canopy trees, as indicated in the Age newspaper on the 17th of August, that it may do when advertised to me on several occasions by Council. It is constrained from publicly releasing such details because offenders and their actions are protected against the public disclosure under the provisions of the Privacy Act. And I call upon the Director of Urban Living, Mr Scott Walker, to respond to this question. Thank you, Mr Walker.
Thanks, Mayor. Most of Council's enforcement actions to address tree protection breaches, such as infringements, notices to comply and formal warnings, would not be able to be publicised due to privacy obligations. However, where a matter is prosecuted in the Magistrates Court and becomes part of the public record, then it may be possible for Council to report on and publicise the matter. This is something that will be considered further and may help to highlight serious illegal tree removals as a deterrent for other offenders.
Thank you, Mr Walker. And Mr Hundley, once again, you'll receive a written response to your question. Question 4 is from Mr Lee Norton of Balwyn North, and the subject of the question is the Uluru Statement from the Hart Deputation. Thank you for your question, Mr Norton. This question was disallowed under Rule 55.2 of the Governance Rules because it was not first asked in writing to a councillor or a member of council staff more than 10 working days before this meeting and does not relate to a matter on tonight's agenda for the current council meeting. So, Mr Norton, you will receive a written response to your question in due course. That brings us to item 6, notices of motion. Ms Ritchie, do we have any notices of motion this evening?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, there are no notices of motion.
Thank you. Item 7 on the agenda is the presentation of officer reports. We have 4 items on the agenda this evening. Item 7.1 is the Balwyn Interwar Heritage Assessment, Amendment C386, adoption. This item will be introduced by Mr Rob Costello, Senior Project Planner.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. This evening's report seeks a decision from Council to adopt Amendment C386 to the Burundara Planning Scheme following the Urban Planning Delegated Committee decision at its meeting on the 3rd of July 2023. Amendment C386, as exhibited, seeks to apply the heritage overlay to one precinct comprising 7 properties, as well as 4 individually significant properties in Balwyn and Deepdean on a permanent basis. A panel hearing to consider the 6 submissions received to the amendment was held over 2 days in May 2023. 3 parties addressed the panel in opposition to the amendment in relation to the Gordon Street precinct, 5 Creswick Street Deepdean and 6 Creswick Street Deepdean. Council officers received the panel report on the 26th of May 2023, which noted that the panel supports heritage controls for all places included in Amendment C386, except for 6 Creswick Street, Deepdean, which was recommended to be removed from the amendment. The panel also recommended minor changes to the citation and statement of significance for 5 Creswick Street, Deepdean. The UPDC considered an officer report on the outcomes of the panel process on the 3rd of July 2023, accepting panel's recommendations and adopting the revised heritage citation for 5 Creswick Street. The UPDC resolved to refer the amendment to an ordinary meeting of Council for adoption. Officers tonight recommend that Council resolves to adopt Amendment C386 as shown in attachments 1 through 5 of this report, and to submit the amendment to the Minister for Planning for approval. This concludes our statement on the amendment. Open to any questions councillors may have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillors, are there any questions for officers? Councillor Watson.
No question, Madam Mayor, but I'm happy to move the motion as printed on the screen at the appropriate time.
Now is the time. There are no other lights on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When we get to this point in the process, which is...
Apologies. I should have searched for a seconder.
Yeah, looking for a seconder.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Happy to second, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Watson, back to you.
That's okay. When we get to this stage in the process, when we're looking at heritage protections, it spans many, many years. And the interwar heritage properties in Balwyn and Balwyn North came to Council in 2014, 2015. It was the council term before I arrived. So it's been a very long journey. The community has had many opportunities to have their say, and they certainly have. And it's with a great deal of pride in the process that we've been through that I support them and move the motion here tonight, and thank the officers very much for their work along the way. And there have been many, many different officers who've been involved in this process. So I commend this motion to my fellow councillors and seek your support. Thank you.
Thank you. It appears that the motion is likely unopposed. There are no other lights on. Councillor Hollingsworth, you have nothing to add to this. I'll put that motion to the vote then. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, officers. That brings us to item 7.2, which is a contractual matter, contract number 2023/2, provision of mattress collection and recycling services. This item will be introduced by Mr George Batsakis, Manager of Facilities, Waste and Infrastructure.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Council requires an appropriately experienced and qualified contractor to provide mattress...
Mr Batsakis, sorry, could I just ask that you speak right into that microphone there? Thank you.
Yep. Council requires an appropriately experienced and qualified contractor to provide mattress collection services from the Burundara Recycling and Waste Centre. This contractor is required to use systems and processes to achieve optimum reuse and recovery with the objective to maximise diversion from landfill. This report seeks to award one contract for an initial period of 3 years with a possible extension of 2-year increments to a maximum of 5 years. This is a schedule of rates contract. The tender valuation panel has assessed all tenders received against quantitative and qualitative criteria and is satisfied that the recommended contractor can perform the required works and demonstrate best value for money. The officer's recommendation is provided in the report. I ask the Council to consider this report for adoption.
Thank you, Mr Batsakis. Councillors, are there any questions for the officers this evening? Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question for Mr Batsakis. Just wanted to ask, with the collection of mattress, so this is obviously referring to curbside collection. The mattresses, I then understand in the report, go to council before they then go to a waste depot. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's a contractor that comes and collects those.
Yeah. So if a person was able to deliver their mattress that was no longer fit for purpose to the council depot, can they be stored there knowing that the waste collector is going to come and collect them at a certain time per week or per month?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, they are stored at the depot.
Right, thank you. And at this stage, it's council's policy to charge for persons to bring their mattresses to the depot, is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, that's correct.
It is. I'd just like to foreshadow potentially general business where I'd like to raise this matter again for council's consideration. But apart from that, I'm very happy to support the officer's recommendation if no one else had anything to add.
No worries. There are no other lights on at this time, but I'm in search of a seconder then, if you're happy to move the motion. Councillor Biggar.
Yes, I'm very happy to second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hollingsworth, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. Just briefly, look, I think it's an excellent report and thank Mr Bizakis for documenting it as thorough as he has. I'm delighted to see, certainly from the social and environmental issues, that a high percentage of the mattresses that are no longer fit for purpose are going to be put to good use to be recycled and reducing the landfill burden. So I applaud the contract and the initiatives moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. It was remiss of me not to test if there was any opposition to it, but it didn't seem as though there were any lights on. Councillor Biggar, did you have any comments to add?
Look, only just to say to also, I think, commend the officers for this report and say that, I mean, it's maybe shocking to realise the number. There's over 7,000 mattresses collected. You know, it's a huge waste, but it's great that we're recycling them. I would hope that in a few years' time, when we relook at this, that they actually have moved from the sort of 61% of the material recovered towards the 100% that they're hoping to go to with that biochar project. But apart from that, very supportive.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr Batsakis. That brings us to item 7.3 on the agenda, the June 2023 Quarterly Financial Report. And presenting this item tonight, we will have Sapphire Allen, the Coordinator of Management Accounting, and Amy Montalti, our CFO. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to present the June 2023 Quarterly Financial Report, which includes detailed financial reporting of the full year forecast for the 22-23 financial year. Please note that these are interim year-end results while the accounts are still being finalised, and we expect some changes after completion of the year-end audit by the Victorian Auditor General's Office, VARGO. In terms of Council's financials, Council's net operating result for the year is a surplus of $24.24 million compared to the 22-23 amended budget surplus of $2.28 million. Against the full year forecast, the result came in $11.28 million favourable against the forecast surplus of $12.96 million. Variance explanations on the favourable full-year result for Council's revenue and expenditure streams are provided in attachment 1 of the report in your agenda papers. Priority projects expenditure for the year is $22.65 million, and the net forward commitments for priority projects to be completed in the 23-24 year is provided in attachment 1. Capital works expenditure for the year is $56.64 million, with a 78% of works completed against the 22-23 amended budget. Against the full year forecast, Council completed 83% of capital works expenditure. Net forward commitments for capital works to be completed in 23-24 is also provided in attachment 1, including committed expenditure. The overall financial position as at 30 June 2023 is satisfactory with a working capital at 2.24. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Ms Allen. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I've probably got similar comments about a number of the figures in there, but I'll just concentrate on one at the moment. Under the
questions or comments, Councillor Galt?
I'm just asking for clarification under Climate Action Plan is under-expent by $954,000. I presume the 612 mentioned at the end of that clause relates to projections to the end of the financial year. Is that correct, and does it illustrate, I think last year's figure was 300 and something, this year we're 600 behind. Are we consistently running 300,000 or more behind in expenditure in this program?
So yeah, the carry forward for that this year is 612,000. I'd have to probably check with places and spaces just to see what their predictions are for this year.
Surely that's what's predicted in that clause. It says total proposed forward commitment to 23-24 of 612,000 at the end of the paragraph.
Yep.
So I think that's what you're projecting by the end of the year. Last year I think it was 300 and something. So can I say that it fairly says that we're running 300,000 a year behind, approximately?
Mr Storer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I suggest that the detail of that is worth exploring with the relevant director? The observation I would make is that we find ourselves often carrying more than our resource capability actually can cope with, which does mean that there can be carryover funding from one year to the next. And I think one of the challenges for us is actually being quite deliberate about ensuring we have the resource capability to deliver the funding commitments which Council actually makes. And that is a subject we'll be discussing with councillors in the forthcoming couple of months.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of officers at this point? If not, I'm in search of a motion. Councillor Stavrou.
I'd like to move the motion, the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Park?
Happy to second that, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Stavrou, would you like to speak to your motion?
I'll be very brief, Madam Mayor. Obviously, the report speaks for itself, and the officers gave us a really good rundown of the quarterly financials. Suffice to say that the work that goes behind this is extraordinary, and being on the Risk and Audit Committee, I understand all the commitments that our officers make and hard work that goes through being able to address auditors and other issues on an ongoing basis. This quarterly update gives us a sense of where the financials are so that we don't get a surprise at the end of the year, and that we certainly have had. So I'll leave it at that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Park, any comments from you? I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, officers. That brings us to item 7.4 on the agenda, sex work decriminalisation, planning changes, communications. This item will be introduced by Cassandra Ray, Coordinator of Urban Planning.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is to decide on the communication channels to inform the community about the changes to town planning controls due to the state government's sex work decriminalisation project. Council's Urban Planning Delegated Committee on the 6th of September 2021 resolved various matters that sought to raise community awareness, highlight the lack of consultation undertaken by the state government, identify potential impacts to council and their residents with regards to the sex work decriminalisation, and advocate to state government against some of the changes that will impact council and their residents. All of these actions are well progressed. However, given the lapse of time, being over 2 years, that the legislation has now been passed and stage 1 of the decriminalisation has already occurred, it is recommended by the officers that we now focus the community attention on what the changes mean and what the relevant new requirements will be. This can be achieved by including an appropriate article in the Boroondara Bulletin and similar information on Council's website with an added feature of frequently asked questions. Officers recommend a modification to the resolution seeking to inform the community about the sex work decriminalisation as printed in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Ray. Councillors, are there any questions for officers? Councillor Hollingsworth? No? Yes, you've turned your light off again. On. That's it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms Ray, a couple of questions with regard to what's proposed here. Reading the report, my understanding is that there is no planning application required for proprietors to actively promote a business or register a business. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair. So the town planning controls are changing, and at this stage we're looking at December 2023. The precise nature of the planning controls are not yet announced to council, that we have not seen yet their final form, but it is understood more broadly and generally that the land use term brothel will be taken out of the Boroondara planning scheme, and there will be a replacement of sex work premises, which is nested underneath a shop in a commercial 1 zone and would not need a planning permit in that particular zone. Each zone would be different depending on whether or not a shop needs a planning permit. The other main change would be that the home-based business, formerly known as home occupation, a planning permit would not necessarily be required for a home-based business, and this means that sex work premises could occur in dwellings with some conditions involved.
Sorry, I'm not sure, my light keeps going off. If I could just continue with the question. At the moment, is it correct that a person operating a hair salon from a home office or home premises would be required to apply for a permit?
A hairdressing salon, as an example, is a type of home-based business that wouldn't necessarily need a planning permit. There are restrictions on the number of staff in that business. There's also a floor area calculation that would need to be met, and a size of a vehicle, which is unlikely to occur for sex work premises.
Right, thank you.
And there's some quantitative controls as well that any future business owner would need to comply with.
Right. And just one follow-up question. So when I look at the Boroondara website, and we have 2 documents there, and one of them is a link to starting up an own business and business leading to prescribed accommodation and health services. There's fairly strong criteria about evidencing that you have enough toilet facilities, bathing, hygiene, etc., etc. But then also there's the State of Victoria app that talks about health, beauty, industries, infection prevention and control guidelines, and legislation to do with the Public Health and Wellbeing Act. And there's very strict criteria about checklists of what has to be evidence that's in place prior to the business being open. So I'm just trying to understand if there would be the same level of oversight for sex work industry.
One of the purposeful changes that the state government made back in 2021 was to eliminate the hurdles associated with sex work premises. And under the Sex Work Act, there were requirements for testing and registration, and that has been quite deliberately abolished. In terms of health services, similar to a beauty salon, and whether or not registration is necessary with the proposed changes to town planning, it's unlikely that health services will need to register these facilities, but I can get someone from the relevant health department to confirm their legislation in that regard.
Thank you, I'd appreciate that. My questions are in concern, obviously, for the proprietor, for their staff and for their clients, and I would like to have an understanding of what basic requirements would be in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. We might be able to take some of those offline, and I might remind councillors that tonight's discussion on this agenda item relates to the community communication specifically, rather than the legislated changes and so forth. So there appear to be no further lights on at this point in time, but I'm in search of a motion. Crikey, there's a flurry of lights. Goodness me, four of you very quickly. Councillor Park.
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation with governments being possessive, '(S), and I'd like to insert the word town before planning on the second line, just so it's abundantly clear.
Thank you.
That's my motion.
Excuse me, Mayor,
Councillor-
I actually had a question. I thought
Councillor-
my light was on, my apologies.
As did I. I thought my light was on, sorry.
Yeah, I had no lights on, but we will foreshadow that motion and make those adjustments while we take a couple of questions. I have Councillor Galt, followed by Councillor Bigger, followed by Councillor Stavrou.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wonder if I can get some more clarity around the dates we're proposing to get this information into the bulletin and the website. All it says here is before December 23.
That's correct. Mr Walker and I will now liaise with the Communications Department to see what sort of time frame would be involved. As you can appreciate with the Burundara Bulletin and the editing schedule, there's a time frame moving forward. We were hoping to get it to the September Burundara Bulletin, but it's more likely to be closer to the October or November Bulletin. We're also conscious of knowing the precise town planning changes. We're hoping that an announcement will be made so that we know precisely the nature of the changes.
If I may, the obvious follow-up question is, how long do we think is reasonable for our residents and ratepayers? What sort of time would they need to construct a protest to the minister if they so choose? And keeping in mind that December 23 is when the second stage of these rules fall into place.
Just through yourself, Mayor, if I can just clarify that there have actually been ongoing discussions with the communications team, and this is programmed to be included in the October bulletin. So we'll make sure that happens. We feel that's about the right balance in terms of timing before the December changes. So it's close enough so there's relevant information leading into that point in time, but still plenty of time if people wish to raise issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Walker. Councillor Bigger.
Yes, thank you. So one of my questions actually follows on from what the response on Councillor Galt's second question, which is, I understood from the report that one of the changes from the original UPDC decision in this is that we're not looking at trying to encourage the community to protest about this, given that this is now not old, but it's no longer really up for influence. But from the way you answered that question, that's not the impression I get.
Again, through yourself, Mayor, absolutely this is explaining that the changes are pending, what those changes are, and is clearly an information piece. It is not a piece that's actually suggesting or encouraging residents to pursue the matter with the government. However, my answer to the previous question was that the timing is of sufficient time that should residents wish to do that, they've got the information, they're armed with the information, they understand what's proposed and, of course, can take their own course of action.
A second question, if I might. So just in relation to the point one about the word inform and what that informing means, I note that in the report we didn't refer at all to effectively to the motivation of the legislation, which was to increase to create a safer work environment for sex workers. So is there an intention that we will refer to the motivation for that, or provide any context for this legislation?
Mr Storer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The intention, if I were to put it briefly, is to provide information, not to incite. So this is very much about simply letting our community know what is proposed, not to take a position with regard to encouraging them to advocate for themselves or to oppose it themselves. It's simply saying to them, these are the provisions as we understand them. and to leave it to them as to decide to do something or do nothing about that. But it's certainly not the objective to actually go out to incite.
Either direction, you're saying? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Stavru.
Madam Mayor, I don't have any questions. I'd like to foreshadow that I will be seconding the motion at the appropriate time.
Wonderful. Let's do that then, and I'll round back to Councillor Park and see whether the motion that is on the screen incorporates your changes sufficiently.
I'll just turn my red light back on. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Stavru, you're happy to second the motion that's on the screen. Thank you. To assist the mover, is there anyone opposed? Councillor Franco. Noted. Thank you. Councillor Park, as the mover, do you wish to speak to your motion?
I think it's self-explanatory, so I'll decline the opportunity.
Thank you. And Councillor Stavru, would you like to speak or reserve your right?
I will reserve my rights, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak to it? Councillor Franco.
Thank you. Look, while I consider the proposed recommendation or motion before us to be an improvement on the original motion in respect of the proposed community consultation, I still have some reservations. I think those reservations were made by Councillor Biggar in her questioning. The original motion that Council adopted back in September 2021 opposed sex work decriminalisations, and among other things it resulted in our council making submissions to the state government opposing the changes. And this motion before us doesn't rescind the whole of that motion. So I harbour some concern about the potential nature of the information that might be provided. I think it's reasonable, at least I consider it, to read into the original motion that the communication that was proposed was definitely intended to incite and generate community concern and opposition to the legislative reforms. I sincerely hope that's not the case here, and it could be read as that's the case, and I've had the benefit of hearing the questions that have been asked, and I know quite a number of councillors in this room hope that that's not the case. But look, on the balance, I'm not going to support, I won't object either, but I just harbour those concerns, and I hope it's factual and not intended to incite. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Biggar.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I will support this motion, but I guess I do feel that that's what, as I alluded to, that the positive motivation for this and the positive, I think probably the positive outcomes of this legislation are completely absent from this paper. And while I understand and appreciate that we are, that this, as Councillor Franco said, this actually is a move in the right direction in terms of not trying to come in so hard-handed or heavy-handed on this issue. I think it's a shame that we haven't noted that that the outcomes of the legislation are likely to make for a safer workplace for sex workers, something that I think is of real importance, and is generally a value. Obviously, there are some challenges for our community, and you know, which we'll need to meet, and which the community, I think it is of value to let them know about this so that they're not blindsided. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Biggar. Councillor Addis.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have some concerns that it's being suggested that we're trying to incite anything, when I had understood that this was simply about providing information to inform our community of what I suspect many will think are very substantial changes, and who might not have been aware what is going to happen. And I think our obligation is to inform them and to let them decide how they would like to respond, if indeed they wish to respond at all. So I have certainly not read any intention to incite anything in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. I echo your comments. Councillor Park.
Thank you. Just a couple of points. I suppose, whilst it's all well and good to posit that this will lead to a safer workplace for sex workers, that's a matter of some significant debate, particularly in the law enforcement community, that just simply doesn't accept that that will be one of the outcomes of this legislation. But it's not for council to make the case for the state government's legislative agenda. That's not our role. But so often as councillors, we hear our communities asking us, why are you allowing these houses to be demolished? Why are you allowing these McMansions to be built? We need to put into context that this is a significant matter and will be very, very significant for some of our residents that will be beyond the control of council, just like so many other planning matters now are. So it's important that council actually communicates with its community and says, this isn't of our doing, this is what's happening, it's not within our control. Seems perfectly reasonable. It's not about inciting anyone, it's about informing the community that these significant changes that can lead to a sex work business being next door to your house or your unit have been implemented by the state government. It's only reasonable that our community gets to know about that, and it's the responsible step by this council to inform its community, and we always have. I urge all councillors to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Park, for rounding out that debate. I'm informed by governance that as the mover has now spoken, debate is now closed on this motion. My apologies, Councillor Stavrou. I know your light was on. I apparently don't have discretion in this regard. So the mover has spoken, and I will now put that motion. All those in favour? Those against? Those abstaining? Thank you, councillors. I declare that carried. Councillors, that now brings us to item 8 on our agenda of general business. I understand there are a few items of general business this evening. Councillor Addison, Councillor Gillies have already foreshadowed that they in fact have items of general business. Would you like to speak to them? And Councillor Hollingsworth, you're on the list as well. Councillor Addis.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm applying for a couple of days, wish to apply for a couple of days leave in October and hence have a conflict of interest with that request. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Gillies?
Thank you, Chair. I'm seeking leave of absence for from the 26th of this month to the 9th of next month.
And you have a conflict of interest in relation to this?
Conflict of interest in this matter, thank you.
Thank you. If you would like to absent yourselves from the chamber while we have that motion up on the screen. And would somebody like to move that motion? Councillor Hollingsworth, Councillor Biggar.
Yes.
Happy to. Sorry, I noticed Councillor Park, I thought had his light. No, happy to move. Thank you.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Biggar.
Yes.
Thank you. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll just wait a moment while we recall those councillors to the chamber. Councillor Park, your light is on next.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to double back to one of the questions asked by Mr Hundley tonight, which was why is the council not taking the opportunity to increase the maximum penalty for unauthorised removal or damage to trees on private property, etc. The answer that was given to that by the Director of Urban Living was that amending the tree protection local law is a lengthy process, etc., etc. I'm concerned that that answer is just simply wrong in that both Mr Hundley and seemingly the Director have relied upon what's on Council's website rather than actually reading the local law. The local law provides that the maximum penalty is 20 penalty units. A penalty unit is currently $192.31, which means that the maximum penalty under the existing local law is actually $3,846.20, not $2,000. So they were both labouring under a misapprehension, and I'm just concerned that the answer that's been given to the public question is simply wrong.
Thank you, Councillor Park. Do you seek comment from officers at this point, or we'll take that on notice and follow it up?
I think from the CEO's nodding, he's probably accepts that that's the case.
Thank you for raising that. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two items for general business, and I'll try and keep them both very quick. So the first one is with regard to the proposed changes to legislation with the Sex Reform Act, and acknowledging that it's not if, it's when, and I'd like, if at all possible, for Council to consider through public health and safety and wellbeing that there is some potential to ensure the premises are designed and established in a way that provide a health environment for proprietors, for staff and for clients. If there's anything that can be done to make sure that Council may have that opportunity. So that was one question for general business. Perhaps if that can be taken offline and addressed later. Thank
Certainly.
you.
Happy to take that offline.
Thank you. And the other question was with regard to the collection of mattresses. And again, I appreciate there'll be no answer on this evening, but I'd like potential for future discussion. If a person is able to deliver a mattress to the depot, that there may be an opportunity to leave it there without any impost of cost, because it would be cheaper than arranging for the contractor to come to their property and pick it up from curbside and then take to council. If a person could use their up to 2 drop-offs per year, 2 free drop-offs per year, to deliver rather than apply for a magistrate collection, I see the end result the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you happy for that one to be followed up after tonight as well? Wonderful. Thank you. Councillor Franco.
Thank you. One item of general business. Thank you, Mayor. Just in relation to Camberwell Green, I'd like to note that the construction commenced in the July school holidays on the restoration of the green open play space near the junction on the site of the former Campbell Council car park. Many local families campaigned for this over the past 6 years, and I gave an election commitment to pursue this initiative, which the Victorian Government has committed to fund and is now delivering. I think it's fabulous news for the families and children of Camberwell Primary School and the surrounding community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Franco. There appear to be no other lights on for general business. However, I do have one to raise, and that is in relation to a recent matter. The Victorian Independent Broad-Based Anti-Corruption Commission, better known as IBAC, has recently conducted an investigative operation called Operation Sandon, and on the 27th of July released the Operation Sandon Special Report. Operation Sandon was an investigation into allegations of improper influence in planning and local councils. I thought it was worth mentioning in general business tonight for the benefit of our community here in Boroondara that officers are working through the 309-page report and its 34 recommendations. These recommendations and how or if they relate to Boroondara will be discussed and changes considered in due course. It's had a little bit of media attention lately and I thought that it was worth raising that for the public's benefit. There appear to be no further lights on for general business. That brings us to item 9, urgent business. Councillors, are there any items of urgent business this evening? It appears not. Brings us to item 10, confidential business. And I'm in search of a motion tonight to close the council meeting to the public in accordance with section 66(2)(a) and subsection 3(1)(e) of the Local Government Act 2020 for the discussion of legally privileged information, being information to which legal professional privilege or client legal privilege applies. So the motion is on the screen. Councillor Hollingsworth, you're happy to move that?
So moved.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Watson.
Happy to second the motion.
Thank you. Is anyone opposed to that?
Is there any explanation of what this is about? This is the first...
It's in your business papers, Councillor Franco.
Okay.
But I can't discuss that while the meeting is still open to the public. So I'll call for that again. Is there any opposition to this? There appears not. Then I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. To the members of the community watching tonight's proceedings, welcome back to the live streaming of the council meeting. There is nobody remaining in the public gallery, so this is the end of the agenda for this evening. There is no further business, so before I close the meeting, I'd like to thank all of those who have joined us online and in the gallery this evening and declare the council meeting closed at 8:15 p.m. Thank you.